Hey there. A very little while ago, I did a video on the future of fountain pens. And as I was recording that, I thought to myself, another important question in my mind is not just how will fountain pens evolve, like what's the next best thing, like that sort of thing, but how do you keep fountain pens alive? Not because they are living, breathing creatures, but how do you keep the interest in fountain pens alive? Now, I have done a video a while ago, that is quite a while ago, about how to keep the fountain pen hobby interesting. I wonder now if that was a separate video or if that was in Consult the Doctor, but I want to say it may have been both. In any case, I gave this some thought too, like what would we do to ensure that fountain pens continue to exist and people remain interested in them? Because let's be fair, if people don't stay interested, if new generations do not get or develop an interest in fountain pens, then that's the end of it. And fountain pen factories will shut down and people will no longer make pens, and then that's the end of it, right? So for me, what's very interesting is that I have told this many times, so I'll be brief, but I learned how to write with a pencil in primary school when I was 6 years old. And then the next year, so that would have been 7, because 6 plus 1 equals 7, we got a fountain pen, a school-supplied fountain pen, and we wrote with that. And initially it was print, and then we moved on to cursive. Not very successfully in my case. I struggled enormously with that. How ironic. In any case, there we are. So what I'm trying to say is people of my generation and older generations in the Netherlands are very familiar with fountain pens. Likewise in Germany, where I think it is still the case, but correct me if I'm wrong, that students have to use fountain pens in school up to a certain level. University, I think you can use whatever you want, but in primary school, secondary school, you have to use a fountain pen. So in these kinds of countries, a fountain pen is very well known. Everybody knows what a fountain pen is. You may not like it, you may not continue to write with a pen, but you have been trained in it, you know what it does and does not do. What I find very interesting is that I am now in Canada and I'm now teaching a generation which, gulp, was born in the 2000s, right? So I have students who were born 2002, 2003, sometimes a little later than that, 2004, which to us, people from the previous century, is interesting in its own regard. But here's the crux of my story. A lot of those students I have found are fully unfamiliar with the fountain pen. And this is not criticism. I'm just saying that to me is interesting. And it just so happens to be the case that once in a while, let's say they're writing an exam, and I have them like sign something at the end of that so that I know who was there and who was not. And then they don't have a pen, and then I have a fountain pen in hand, and I say, you can use mine. With a little bit of instruction. What's very interesting, I will exaggerate this, is that many of them try to write with it like this. So feet up. I'm not ridiculing anyone. It's also not a criticism, but they have no clue because they've never seen something like this and they don't know how it works. And to me, that's fascinating. Not because of cultural differences, whatever. I don't care about that. It's interesting to me that we're dealing with a generation now that may never have seen a fountain pen up close. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But if you like fountain pens, I'm not saying it's a good thing either. Because they don't know. So what do? Sorry for this lengthy introduction, but I think it's important to set the stage in an appropriate manner. And here you are. That's how serious it is. People may have no idea how to use a fountain pen. And that's because they're not trained in it. So what do? If you want fountain pens to continue existing, you cannot lock yourself up in an ivory tower with all your pens and go, my precious, okay, you know, and then sort of lick it or like do things. So if you do with your fountain pen, you can't do that. Because if you do that, rest assured, I give it 2 or at most 3 generations and fountain pens are stomped out. They're gone because there's no more interest in them. Because people don't even know what they are. That's a very real risk. So in my case, I try to educate people. And I try to tell people, like students, I tell them something like, well, this is called a fountain pen. And it's something that I learned how to write with. And it leads to interesting conversations. Just maybe 2 weeks ago, a couple of students were working outside my office, and they asked me if I could write some signs. They were selling stuff for our student psych society. They asked me if I could write little like sort of price notes of the mugs are this much and that sort of stuff. I said sure, and I did that, and then we had a conversation. And this is an important moment because now you get to, I don't really like this word necessarily, but then now you get to proselytize. Now you get to explain what pens are about, and you may get people interested in what that means. And they had questions. And one of them asked, so do you fill this with liquid ink? How does that work? And I said, yes, you do. Look at this. This is a bottle. This is my ink. This is B.R.E. brown ink. Whoa, you have your own ink. Yes, I do have my own ink. Anyway, this is what it looks like. This isn't a fancy bottle. Yeah, it's a very fancy bottle. I know. But you can explain and educate. Not lecture, but explain and educate. Look, this is called a nib. This is a feed. The ink flows through like this. You can try it, but don't use a lot of pressure. Be very gentle, very light pressure. And I think it's interesting. Something it is interesting. Some don't. And it starts with trying to make it right like this, and that doesn't work, and that's okay. Again, I'm not ridiculing anyone. That's part of your education. Actually, you have to flip it. You see the ink that flows through here, and this kind of keeps the ink going, and then the ink comes out there, and it has to be aligned this way. That can be helpful because that education passes on knowledge and may get people interested. And it may also not, right? But then at least people know. I would find it a very sad world if someone has no clue what a fountain pen is, has never seen or held one, because then rest assured that technology will disappear. It's already an uphill battle, right? So bear that in mind. Another thing you can do beyond explaining things is, first of all, have conversations. Quite often I have conversations in meetings. People see I have a fountain pen and we talk about, oh yeah, fountain pens. And the interesting thing is this can be fun with colleagues because I now have several colleagues pinpointed that I know use fountain pens, and we have conversations about that. And that's very interesting because you may not know that, but then they find that there is a bond, and you have a bond with that specific colleague that otherwise you might not particularly bond with, right? That's interesting. People in different disciplines or whatever, you know, that's how things work in my job, but in your job might be different departments, different whatever. You may not necessarily have anything in common work-wise, but now you have something in common that you can bond over. But they already use pens, so that's kind of besides the point for this video. Another thing that I think is helpful and that you should not underestimate is you can also give someone a pen. Give someone an expensive pen. Now, I'm in a special position because companies send me pens, and I do things with those pens. So often I have to send them back, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I get to keep them. Sometimes I don't want to keep them. And then a nice thing that you could do with such a pen is give them away. And I've did that recently. I have a sort of a teaching assistant who's doing really good work. And I said, okay, well, now you're a big boy, so now you get to write with the real pen. And he said, oh, what does that mean? Well, he didn't say it like that, but that was the point. Oh, what does that mean? I said, well, it means this. This is a fountain pen. Look, this is a fountain pen. And I gave him a fountain pen, metal pen, so you can drop it and it will survive. And I showed him how to fill it. I let him do it. I said, okay, it's my ink, but use this ink. This is what you do. Take the cap off. Okay, unscrew the barrel. This is called a converter. Okay, here's a tissue. Take the nib, put it in. Yeah, just like that. Yeah. Now twist that end. Okay. See how it draws up ink. Okay. That's now it has ink. Now you wipe that down. Okay. Screw it back together. Okay. Now you're ready to write. Try it out. Do you like it? Yes. Okay. Good. Get out. Right. Very helpful. But in a nutshell. But that works too. And the fun thing is he's now using that. He's actually using it. I see him using it. So that is fun. Now you have shown someone that there is another way to write beyond disposable ballpoints. And that can be very helpful. And that's nice. And I'm not saying that that specific person is now going to end up owning 500 or 600 pens. And that's not the purpose either. But the purpose is broaden your horizon. See that there is other stuff out there that you can write with. And that people have been writing with for decades and decades and decades. And you can now be part of that history. And it's good for the environment. You don't throw out all this single-use ballpoints. You don't throw out all that plastic. You have a pen, you have a converter, you buy a bottle of ink, it'll last you a long time, and that's fun. And it's good for the environment, and it's fun for you, and it's nicer to write with than a crappy ballpoint. So, those are some of my thoughts. I think that is a good way to get people interested, get people excited, get them to maybe become enthusiastic about fountain pens. And as a result, fountain pens may stand a chance and they may survive. Because we're not going to live forever. And if we don't pass on this interest, I don't see pens surviving. Like I said, it's already an uphill battle. We already have digital technology expanding at an exponential rate, becoming more and more important. But showing someone that they can also, I don't know, leave a loved one a handwritten note or write a grocery list or just take lecture notes, meeting notes, it doesn't matter. But you can do that kind of stuff by hand. It's your handwriting, it matters. It's your personality, it's your character expressed in that. It matters. So if you like that hobby, you want that to survive, you've got to do something. It's that simple. And these, I think, are some ways to do it. I hope this was not useless rambling that has bored you to death. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you do. I know people give away pens. I know they give other people preppies or metros or like that kind of stuff. I think it's a great thing. But are there other things that you do? And I don't want to sound like I am lecturing to people. I mean, you have a choice. You can also just enjoy your pens and not care. And that's okay, I suppose. It's okay. You have your stuff and that's okay. But if you want this to survive, you've got to be a bit more active about it. And that's it. I hope this was useful. And I'll gladly see you later. Bye.